What I love about science is that as you learn, you don't really get answers. You just get better questions. John Green. It's time for science, and it's time to talk fostering safe, hands-on science environments. Our guests today are safety expert Dr. Kenneth Roy and 2025 Paul deHart Hurd Award winner Kenneth Huff. Dr. Kenneth Roy is currently the Director of Environmental Health and Safety for Glastonbury Public Schools in Connecticut. In addition, he is the Chief Science Safety Compliance Advisor / Chief Safety Blogger for the National Science Teaching Association and the Safety Compliance Officer for the National Science Education Leadership Association. He has published 13 science and STEM laboratory safety books and manuals and authored over 850 safety articles in professional journals. We talk about the importance of safety in the science classroom, how teachers can make sure any necessary controls are in place before they teach, the importance of explaining safety issues to students, and some of the great free safety resources available. NSTA 2025 Paul deHart Hurd Award winner Kenneth L. Huff has been a public school science teacher for over 33 years and is currently teaching in the Williamsville Central School District in New York. He is also a teacher in residence with the Harvard University Lab Exchange. We discuss Mr. Huff's long career and how his interest in teaching began, challenges he faced as he began as a middle school teacher, and how his interest in space science helped him, and his role as a teacher in residence with Harvard University Lab Exchange, including the free resources they offer to teachers around the world. Well, it's time for science, and it is time to talk about safety in the science classroom. You know, we love our science education talks and all that, but of course, the safety of students and teachers is always the most important thing. And on this podcast, we always go to the experts for the best information. Dr. Kenneth Roy is the Director of Environmental Health and Safety for Glastonbury Public Schools in Connecticut. He also serves as NSTA's Chief Safety Compliance Advisor and as NSELA's Safety Compliance Officer. Dr. Roy also serves as a consultant for Connecticut State OSHA. Dr. Roy is a nationally and internationally recognized safety specialist and accomplished author of over 13 science and STEM laboratory safety books and over 850 safety articles in professional journals. So Dr. Ken Roy, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Appreciate the opportunity. Believe me, this is a really important issue.
Incredibly important issue. I was going to make a joke because in college I did a lot of theater, and there was a poster up on the wall that I always loved that said, "If you think OSHA is a small town in Wisconsin, you're in big trouble." So I have nothing but love for OSHA, especially in theater and, of course, in science, because, you know, as a proud holder of an English degree, English classrooms, not necessarily very dangerous places, but science classrooms, on the other hand, probably can be. So let's start talking a little bit about what your role as environmental health and safety for the Glastonbury Public Schools, what does that entail? What do you do?
Well, basically, I oversee everything relative to safety in the school district. And that means we have a very large high school, 2 middle schools, and about 6, 7 elementary schools. And there's also a STEM magnet school. And my job is to basically help make it, and let me just start by saying, you can never make it safe. Okay? You can only make it safer. You got to put that R on safe. Right? And how do you make it safer? Well, you do it through training, you do it through appropriate supervision, and it's also a responsibility on the part of the teacher, because legally it is the teacher who is responsible for safety in the science and or STEM instructional space. And I say instructional space, it's not only laboratories, it's also science classrooms, all right? And also storerooms, preparation rooms, et cetera, et cetera. So they're number one legally to make sure things are covered safety-wise. I want to make sure it's safer, not only for the teacher as an employee under OSHA, but also for all the students, any paraprofessionals in there, whatever. So it's really critical for teachers to understand. So for example, there needs to be appropriate, what we call engineering controls. Again, I oversee that. In other words, appropriate ventilation. Ventilation in labs has to be totally one way in, one way out. Everywhere else, they only get 20% fresh air. It's 100% in the lab. Well, why is that? That's because of the flammable vapors, the toxins, et cetera, right? You don't want people breathing that in, right? So that's an engineering control. The information relative to eye wash, all right? Showers, fire extinguishers. Those are all called engineering controls. Teachers need to make sure those engineering controls are in place and operational before they start carrying out any hands-on activities. And that's K through 12. That's just middle and high school. Because remember, there are some elementary schools that have formal science laboratories, right? Others just have basically classroom instructional spaces. However, when you look at science, and I'm glad you started out by saying, well, look at language arts, it's not as it's not unsafe compared to lab. 3 kinds of hazards, all right? Biological hazards, chemical hazards, and physical hazards. So there's a whole spectrum of possibilities of how unsafe it can be. And unfortunately, the universities, not all, but many, all right, in their teacher prep program involve no safety whatsoever. So when these to-be teachers come into the classroom first time, they're clueless. It's not their fault, but they're clueless relative to safety. So someone circling back, myself, as Director of Environmental Health and Safety, and I'm also under OSHA, the Chemical Hygiene Officer, because there's an actual standard specific to science classrooms. Right now, I'm talking middle and high school. When you have a formal science laboratory, you're under the OSHA laboratory standard. At the elementary, you're under the HAZCOM, the right to understand. So they're covered also, but it's a little bit different because they don't have as serious types of chemicals as you would in the middle and the high school. However, they still have the responsibility of making sure any of these hazards are addressed, especially at the elementary when you're dealing with very young students who you got to watch every minute. You can't turn your back because they might potentially get into something, right? Because they don't know any better, right? They're just beginning to learn. And a lot of times when I do training of elementary, I start by saying, do the elementary teachers, do you use any hazardous chemicals? Oh, no, we don't use any hazardous chemical. I said, do you use vinegar? Well, yeah. Well, you know, that's on our salad at night. And yeah, we use that in the classroom at the elementary. I said, what about alcohol? Yeah. All right, both of those under OSHA are very hazardous chemicals. All right. Okay, which means you better have an eye wash station if there's a splash. All right, a shower if you get inundated with it somehow on your clothing, whatever. So even at the elementary level, teachers need to make sure they have those engineering controls. They also need to make sure they have appropriate PPE, personal protective equipment. That includes eye protection. And here's where's a lot of the confusion. Either they don't use eye protection at all, and I've done mock OSHA inspections in elementary, middle, and high school. I'll go into the elementary, and again, they're using vinegar, all right? Kids have nothing on their eyes, or they have safety glasses. And I'll say to the teacher, that's not eye protection. Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. You know, yeah, we've got safety glasses. I said, well, if you're on a construction site, yeah. I said, no, this is a laboratory. This is splash. Whenever you have splash, you must have indirectly vented chemical splash goggles, all right? You don't have them, you don't do it, period. Because if you know you're supposed to have them and you don't do it and a kid gets blinded, worst thing, and I've seen this happen, guess who's it legally? You, all right? You are. And there is shared liability with the administration who's supposed to be doing supervision, and that's not a drive-by. They're supposed to come in, sit down, and sit there for a whole lesson to make sure things are appropriate safety-wise. So like I always say, safety is job one, all right? Teachers, and unfortunately in this country, it's very sad. In fact, what we've done now at the NSTA twice a year, we offer safety webinars for elementary pre-service elementary, and another webinar for pre-service middle and high school, secondary, in other words. And that's so, and we even now have the professors joining in, which makes me laughing in a way because they're supposed to be doing this. But hey, as long as they're there, that works. And we just started out with one in the fall. Now we do fall and spring because we've had such an unbelievable, we get several hundred people every time. I mean, it's just great. We've been doing this for about 3-4 years. It's been very popular, very useful because we're like the only act in town. It's just wild stuff. But,
well, we're definitely going to link to those in the show notes so anybody can join those in and watch those.
Yes, they're for free. FREE.
I love that. All right. Well, that will definitely be, I was going to come back to that, but that's definitely something we'll do. There's got to be resources out there. And the other thing I really like is that one thing we talk about a lot, especially with the elementary and the younger grades, even like pre-K, is getting kids used to how science is done. And if you start them young, if you give them the safety goggles, if you and stress that importance, they're going to go up the grades and into middle school and high school already knowing that kind of thing. So I would think it's extremely important for the elementary students.
This is why they need to do hands-on, not just read about science. You need to do science, especially at the elementary level, because they're just out of the gate, so to speak, all right? They have to go all the way around the track, right? They're just starting. And what you're saying is spot on. You need to focus on safety. You need to explain it. And you also should have volunteer parents or guardians there while you're doing things that possibly might be slightly unsafe for them. Okay, then you need to have the other pair of eyes because, again, the responsibility lies, if there's an accident, with the teacher. And I cannot emphasize that enough for teachers. If you haven't gotten safety training from your administration, you need to put it in writing. In writing, because unfortunately, sometimes administrators develop dementia, if you know what I mean.
Selective.
Selective. If something happens, and they'll say, oh, gee, like if they didn't provide enough funding for eye protection, and the teacher went ahead and did it anyways, right? Again, there's shared liability. And the administrator will go, well, you never told me. Obviously, if you told me, I would have made sure you had the money for that, blah, 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 blah. That's why you put it in writing. And you go, really? Here's the email that I sent you. And the other thing is, keep it at home. Don't keep it on the job site. I hate to even say that. But once in a while, I have seen things disappear out of their site.
Got to have that paper trail. Need the paper trail.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. Make sure everything you do with safety, you put it in writing. Even when you're doing the training, even at the elementary level, you do a handout sheet, all right, with the topics that you're going to cover with the kids. And there's just certain things that you can do and certain things you can't. So therefore, you must do a safety hazard assessment, a resulting risk assessment, and then what is the appropriate safety action? 3 steps. The hazard, what are the hazards? This is before you do anything, all right? When you're planning on it. What are the possible hazards? Can a kid get burned because it's hot? Could they get blinded because they get a splash? Could they break a finger or something because something falls on it? All right, all these kinds of things. And what's the risk? Well, broken bones, blindness, skin, burnt, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so what are the safety that you need to do? Well, obviously, eye protection, gloves, hand protection. Maybe it's don't do it at all protection. All right? So, there's the teachers at the elementary, even though it's, quote, not as dangerous, relatively speaking, to the chemical hazards, it still is because of the developmental level of those students, the maturation much lower than middle and high school.
And as we are supported by the company School Specialty in Foss, so a lot of those things are wonderful kits full of great stuff, but that's sort of an attractive nuisance for kids. I mean, so I'm assuming that one of the biggest tips would be just making sure things are stored correctly. If you've got a storeroom, or those kind of things that teachers should be looking for.
It's appropriate storage. Everything must be secured. That means locked up so the kids can't access it. And the third part of that is how you're going to get rid of it, disposal. So you have access, you want to purchase it. Before you do any of that, you need to figure out how it's going to be used, how you're going to store it, and how you're going to get rid of it. All right? Especially some of these hazardous chemicals are very expensive to get rid of. I mean, we're talking sometimes thousands of dollars to have a commercial. You can't bring it out in the soccer field and pour it on the ground. All right? You
You'd be
can't do
tempted
that.
to,
In fact,
but don't do that. Yeah.
well, one time we had hired a group, this is a number of years ago, and the company came in and, oh, yeah, and they said, well, you didn't give us a list. Excuse me, yeah, I did give you a total. Well, okay, there's something, no, please. Well, what they did, we caught them on camera, all right? Near the end of they went in the back in the soccer field and they poured some of the stuff right there. So we had them, right? We had them, and they had to pay very dearly for that. I mean, you just don't do that. Come on.
Yeah.
So make sure you have a credible company. Get references from other people that have used the company. It's really important. But again, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things we talk about a lot on the podcast is taking the kids outdoors. Are there outdoor safety tips? Are there any things you would suggest? I mean, other than teachers understand how to corral their kids, and we have a lot of things in line for that, but what would you suggest?
First thing teachers need to do, what are the Board of Education policies on field trips? You need to secure that. Require, usually from your Board of Education or from your superintendent, your supervisor, whoever it is. You get that in writing so you can see what the board's expectations are. Other thing we do legally, if it's in writing, it must be done. If it's written, it must be done. Okay? So let's say you're going to follow that. Well, next thing you need to do is you need to let your administrator know that this is what you'd like to do. It's an okay. Number two, as soon as you get the okay, again, in writing to the parents, you explain to them, you're going to have a field trip. The student needs to come along. Is there any medical issues that you need to address? And you also need to check with the school nurse, because a lot of times it's reported to the nurse and not the teacher, right? Maybe they need to have a volunteer there with them, especially if they're special ed or whatever, right? Next thing you need to do, wherever you're going to go to field trip, you go first without the student. Okay? No students. You go first, you survey, you look, are there any hazards? Are there any resulting risks? And what safety maybe out in the field, and if you're going in woodland times because there's a lot of brush, this and there, you need eye protection. I mean, I'm just saying. So those are the kinds of things you need to look at and to make sure you do that. Now, another kind of thing that teachers tend to do, they'll have a speaker come in. Okay, here's another whole ball game. I mean, it's just wild stuff, because if you have a speaker come in, you don't have the speaker come in beforehand and explain what they're going to do for safety, and they come in, they do something that's totally unsafe. Maybe they use alcohol and they light flames and it sets off a sensor up in the ceiling, got to evacuate the school, or you got an explosion. You're it. So you always invite the speaker to come in first, all right, and get in writing what the activity is, what potential hazards there are, what risks are, and what safety approaches they're going to do to make it safer for your kids in that classroom.
Never 100% safe, but safer.
You can never make, you can never make it safe. And people go to me, what are you talking about? We're doing all this OSHA stuff. No, that's to help make it safer, not safe. Accidents that's what they are. They're accidents. It's not planned. This is not security. We have a Department of Security officer who handles things. All right, you get terrorists coming into, we haven't, God forbid, but I'm just saying, you have terrorists come in. All right, that's safe. That's security. That's not safety. Safety involves accidents. Those, you never know when they're going to happen. But you can prevent most of the stuff to make it safer.
I would think that a lot of the elementary maybe didn't think about things like the eye protection and stuff, which I think is a great thing to do. And as we were talking a little bit earlier, I wanted to say about some resources, or if they're not lucky enough to have somebody like you in the district, I hope they do. I hope they have safety officers in every district.
We are a vanishing breed. Very seriously, I hate to even say that. And the problem under OSHA that superintendents have is chemical hygiene officer and the safety compliance officer. If you don't have one, guess who is it? Superintendent of schools. Oh, that really makes me feel secure. Some of the individuals I have had superintendent, this is no lie because I have my consultant firm, and they'll have me come in and do mock OSHA inspections. They want me to do training of staff, which is great. You know, I applaud it. So I had this is one school. I had a supervisor, science supervisor. Could you please come in? But the superintendent wants to talk to you. So, okay. Meet with the superintendent. He says, I don't know what they want you here for. We're not under OSHA. This is a public school, big city in the state of Connecticut. I'm sure remain nameless as a town. And the superintendent, no, we're not under OSHA. I said, excuse me, you're not under? No, our district isn't OSHA. I said, could you excuse me 1 second? Take out my phone. I go to the back door of the OSHA website. I find out over the last 10 years, OSHA has been in that school district unannounced 3 times. That's almost unheard of. 3 times over 10 years. They have several $100,000. That's unheard of also. Fines, okay? I said, you know, see what's on my phone here from OSHA website? Can you please explain, because either they don't know you're under their jurisdiction, or you don't know
or you don't.
that you are under their jurisdiction. He turns white. He turns scarlet. He goes, well, I guess we are. Fine, you're hired. This is a kind of, I go into elementary magnet, all right? STEAM. It's a STEAM lab. I'm seeing kids using table saws, miter saws of all things, which is totally inappropriate for elementary. I said to the teacher, what kind of training did these kids get? She goes, none. I said, what do you mean none? I said, what about you? She says, I'm going to tell you a story. I told the principal that, you know, I need to use it and I need to get training. And the principal said to me, oh, don't worry about that. I'm sure, you know, when you were very young and your dad worked in the garage with his power tools, that he had you in there showing you how to use them. So there's no need for you to be trained. I said, I'm going to tell you right now, you stop their use, you stop using it, and you put it in writing to them. No further use of these power tools until I receive appropriate training, as also my students need. This is what's happening out there in the real world. You know, I mean, it's just craziness.
Well, it's a good lesson, too. I mean, if a teacher feels that they are working with unsafe things, they need to speak up about it, definitely. I think they need to bring it up to the district.
Not only speaking it up, but follow up with it in writing. As I told you in our previous meeting, please be aware, blah, blah, blah. And until such time that this is addressed, we are no longer doing hands-on. Now, that's a big problem for secondary, because high schools, right, they have to attest to the universities and the colleges that they have like a minimum of 2 years of lab science. So if you're not doing any lab activities, you got a big problem. If your guidance department turns around and tells them that, oh yeah, we've doing that, and you haven't, that's a big issue, because if the word gets out to that university, that school could get sued. You know, I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, you know, it's great because you're obviously not very passionate about this. So it's
Let me tell you very quick. Let me tell you why I'm passionate. When I started teaching, a few decades ago, quite a few actually, my first year I taught chemistry. Okay, it was in a small district. One day I'm going to dilute hydrochloric acid. Now, I never got any training, except I knew I should have eye protection. Okay. The rule is always add acid to water. AAAW. I didn't know that. I put the acid in the glass beaker and then added the water. Within seconds, it started boiling, bubbling. Boom! I was covered with acid. It ate right through my clothes, all over my skin. I would be blind today if I had not had my goggles on. I'm very lucky I healed well and I had no scars or anything. But you know what? From that point on, I committed myself. It's as long as I'm in this profession, I'm committing myself safety job one, because I'm sure if I did this, that many others coming out of educational institutions, and that hasn't changed. This kills me. After all these decades, it hasn't changed. And you know what? I said to myself, okay, I'm going to be a safety crusader, because these are the safety crusades, all right? And I've trained other people. There's a whole group of us. But unfortunately, again, There are not many of us, and things have improved to some degree, but it's still, you think, and I do expert witness work, my closing argument is always, and you think you're sending your kid to a safe place. No! You're not.
As
right?
a parent,
and this
you should
is
be outraged.
this the court. That's all they focus on. And you know what? Almost every time after that, the school districts, because the parents hire me, the parents' lawyer, not the school district, right? And they got to settle out of court because they know this is a no-brainer. They're going to lose big time.
So safety is good for everybody. It covers the bases.
Well,
it covers your kids.
yes,
It covers your teachers.
And it's not only science now, remember. All right, we're talking about tech ed engineering labs, all right, with all those power tools, hand tools, et cetera, all right? Another big problem right now is the STEM and STEAM labs, because that involves science, it involves tech ed, and if it's STEAM, it involves art. Art's got its own issues, all right? I mean, sometimes I have to deal with this. Silica. What do you mean silica? I mean silica. In art? Well, where does that come? Clay dust. Clay dust is loaded with silica. In fact, OSHA has a special standard that schools are supposed to be using. Now, you know, if you're under, not all school districts are under OSHA, right? OSHA, that's legal safety standards. But we also have better professional safety things that going on here, right? Better professional safety. That's like through the NSTA, NSELA, American Chemical Society, you know, you name it. Those are the organizations, associations. The courts see those equal. So when one of these viewers of yours goes on to the NSTA website and reads, you know, you're not supposed to do this in your lab, and they go ahead and do it, in court, I can cite that, and they got trouble. You know, they got trouble. Okay, I was going to say for the resources. Is that
yes, I was going to say, I want to circle back to resources because NSTA obviously a wonderful place to start. But what would you suggest?
Well, there's two things. There's two things they need to go to, and again, you just have to Google this. All right, there's an NSTA safety portal. NSTA safety portal. That's what you Google. All right, and they have a lot of safety papers put out by the NSTA Safety Advisory Board, and it covers things like occupancy load. You can't just keep piling kids in a room. All right, there's occupancy. That's a fire code violation, right? And if you are over the occupancy load and you do the hands-on thing, you're it if something happens. Okay, so anyways, we have that. I write monthly. We have a safety blog, NSTA safety blog. I write a monthly commentary, right? Monthly commentary, and it's also printed in the NSTA. They have two newspapers. It's in that, but it's free access online. Okay, so just NSTA safety blog. All right, and then all the list is in there, and the monthly commentaries are in there. So those are two of the very best. NSELA, NSELA, National Science Education Leadership Association. Also that, just NSELA, just NSELA, safety. And a review, that's mostly for supervisors and the like, but also teachers can use it. No two ways about it. The American Chemical Society, again, ACS, safety, just Google it. They got, but theirs is just specifically on chemical. I shouldn't say just, that's very important. All right, all right. And there are a few others, but those are the best. And also OSHA. Don't forget OSHA. And again, even though your school district, that's the first thing you find out. Am I under OSHA? Because if I'm under OSHA, I'm supposed to be following the chemical hygiene, the lab safety. I'm supposed to have a chemical hygiene officer. I'm supposed to be trained annually under the OSHA thing. If you're not, well, that's not too bad, because now under legal safety standards and the better professional safety practices, because the NSTA says, yeah, you're supposed to be trained. Well, then your administration needs to make sure you are trained annually. Copy it off the website to the teacher. Tell them to give it to the principal or your supervisor. Where's my training? It's required. And now you have to be that way, because God forbid, if there's an accident, they're going to point the finger at you because, oh, we didn't know.
I think we should sell T-shirts that just say, "Where's my training?" I think that'd be a great thing.
Yeah. And unfortunately, sometimes teachers that are non-tenured are afraid to ask that. Then I would urge them to go to their union representative and explain to them what it is and have the union go and talk. because funny things happen to non-tenured now and then. If you know what I'm saying. No, most administrators, once they know, because then when they know, and if it's in writing, then they have liability. That's why you always put it in writing. And boy, it's amazing how they come around real quick when you give it to them in writing.
Oh, Dr. Roy, this has been delightful. When you think, well, we'll talk safety. I don't know how interesting this is going to be. Well, it's fascinating. I love it. This is awesome.
Never boring. Trust me.
Never boring.
People say,
Never boring.
aren't you bored as a safety compliance officer? I says, are you kidding me? Sometimes I even have sleepless nights over it. It's so exciting.
You must get the heebie-jeebies going into some places like, oh my God, what are you people doing?
Well, you want to talk about war zones. I mean, and I have been in a few where I thought I was in the armed forces. I'm very serious.
Oh man.
And I'm saying to myself, God, kids working here? I mean, you have got to be kidding. It's just, I had the last thing, one school district, the earth science person was collecting rocks, right? And he had them all over the classroom, used as paper holders, this and that. Guess what? They were from uranium. They were radioactive. And it just so happened somebody from the EPA just happened to have a Geiger counter. It was going to do some other kind of thing, was walking through the school, and the thing went crazy when he went by the earth science lab. He walks in, he says, oh my God, he says, get out of here. He said, this place is radioactive. It's like a nuclear power plant. This show, you think, like I'm saying. I mean, I have a ton of war stories, and I've written 1 or 2 books on a number of these things. But I'm just telling you, it's just wild stuff.
That's amazing to me. Wow, uranium. That's hilarious. Dr. Roy, I can't thank you enough for being here. This was really fascinating. Thank you for all this really valuable information.
I salute you because now you're in with us. No, very seriously. You can get the word. The more people you can get the word out on the podcast, the more helpful it's going to be, because you're raising teachers' levels of awareness and those of the administration. They need to understand the seriousness of this, how they're legally responsible, and you want to make it safer for not only the teacher, all occupants in that instructional space, be it a science classroom or a science laboratory. I don't care what they say, Tom. I think you're the best. On that note.
And that's how we're going to end. Thank you, Dr. Roy.
Yeah. All right. You take care.
Well, it's time for science, and it is time to talk to this year's winner of the NSTA and School Specialty Paul deHart Hurd Award for Teacher of the Year, Kenneth Huff. Kenneth Huff has been a public school science teacher for over 33 years and is currently teaching in the Williamsville Central School District in New York. Kenneth served 2 terms on the National Science Teaching Association Board of Directors and as president of the Science Teachers Association of New York State and of the Association of Presidential Awardees in Science Teaching. He was a member of the writing team for the Next Generation Science Standards. So we're going to talk to Kenneth about his approach to teaching, engaging kids in science, and what he's learned over his 33 years in the classroom. So Kenneth Huff, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I think any teacher that makes it 33 years should be given an award just for surviving. I mean, oh my goodness, 33 years. That's amazing.
It's been a wonderful career, and I'm just so thankful for the many teachers and colleagues that have supported me and helped me through the way. I've had some of the best teachers in our nation, and for that I'm so grateful.
That's great. I could sit here, I'd probably take 20 minutes just reading through your resume and all your awards. So I think that we're talking to the right person for this. So I want to start, how did you get into teaching? Was that always your path? Were you going down a different path and you ended up teaching? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure, Tom. Well, my career began with the interest in Toastmasters International when I was coming out of high school. So I was very interested in Toastmasters and had a friend encourage me to attend one of the meetings, and I really felt how I liked how that felt. It was a wonderful experience of sharing ideas, and from there I became interested in teaching and sharing ideas. During that time, I was also in a second career. I was working in the dairy industry, and I was also taking classes at my alma mater, SUNY Buffalo State. So continued to do that until I was able to earn my degree and go into student teaching, and then from there have my own classroom.
As being from New York, it's one of my favorite pieces of trivia is that New York is the 3rd largest dairy state in the union. So it makes sense that you were in dairy. I like that. So how did you then go into teaching? Was that did you decide to get a job as a middle school, high school? How did you get into the actual profession?
Like most teachers, Tom, I started substituting and working with other school districts, and just tried to pick up as many days as I could and be known by some of the other teachers that were teaching. And then there was an opportunity that came up. I put in my application and was interviewed and was able to secure the position.
So you got into science teaching right away. Was that always were you a middle school science teacher right from the start?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So how did that go at first? Was it how was your first year as the teacher in science? That can be a little crazy.
It was challenging, no doubt, but I had an affinity at the time for learning about more about NASA and our space program. So early on in my career, that was very instrumental in me helping me fine-tune my skills and really bring to the forefront how to engage my students with the excitement of our space program. At the time, our space shuttle was still flying, and the students were very interested in learning more about space and propulsion and some of the things that were used to launch astronauts into space. Even had astronauts come to our school on several occasions and meet with the students.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that can inspire students. Considering the various awards you've gotten, including this recent Teacher of the Year, what is your general approach to teaching? Why do you think that what you're doing is standing out and getting recognition? How do you approach teaching?
Well, one of the things from my standpoint, in terms of my approach to teaching, is really what does the research say in terms of teaching. So two of my favorite books. The first one is How People Learn. That book was published in 2000 from the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And then there was a follow-up to that report, How People Learn Too, which came out in 2018. And the books basically talk about what is learning. So, for example, in this one book here, How People Learn, it mentions that learning is an active verb. It's something that people do. It's not something that happens to them, and people are not passive recipients of learning. So really grounding what I do in the classroom with these ideas from the National Academies has been such transformative in my career as a science teacher.
You talked earlier a little bit about engaging students in science, because one of the things we talk about on this podcast a lot is how wonderful science is for that. A lot of classes like math or even English. I have an English degree. I love English, but they can feel a little bit stale at times. And science is always interesting, and kids are always having to do an investigation or do things like that. So how do you engage students with science? What are some of your tips for that?
Well, one of the things I try to do in terms of engaging students is thinking about phenomena that's culturally relevant and things that are important to students' lives. So living in Western New York, we get a lot of snow here. So helping our students understand things about lake effect snow. And in the summertime, many of our students spend time on Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. So helping them understand things such as an algal bloom, what is that like? So making it relevant for them in that regard. So I also authored a book with two colleagues, one being an NGSS writer, another colleague who works in New Jersey. And in this book, we mentioned that teachers play a role in engaging students in science by creating a learning environment that piques their curiosity and provides a structure for immersing learners in science performances to make sense of phenomena. We talked about engaging students in relevant and interesting phenomena and how that builds the curiosity and interest and identity in science, and then being able to structure learning to engage students in three-dimensional performances helps them apply science beyond the classroom.
Yeah, that comes up a lot, is the getting kids in their local area gives them something really to focus on. Do you do a lot of outdoor stuff, or
I do when I can. So I do a project with my students that has been published in a National Academy's book, and also in some NSTA periodicals, some journals, and it's called the SNOW Project. So it has an acronym like many things in education. It's called the SNOW Project. So students synthesizing snow data in natural objective ways. So I take my students outside and we measure the differences in temperature and the depth of a snow pit. So we use these tools called thermochrons, and we measure the range of temperatures in the snow, and we look at different snow crystals, and we connect with NOAA meteorologists so that the students understand how lake effect snow forms in western New York. So trying to do things outside. And the first day of school, actually, I take my students outside and we do an investigation with Newton's laws of motion, where they're using water balloons, not to throw at each other, but to learn about collisions and thinking about how energy transfers from one system to another. Later this school year, I hope to take the students outside where we're doing an investigation on students measuring albedo and thinking about the standard MSPS 4-2 and learning about waves. So yes, I do try to take the students out when the weather cooperates.
I like how it's very specifically Buffalo, having to deal with snow all the time, because you guys get some snow.
Yes, we do.
You're not kidding around with the snow in Buffalo, that's for sure.
We measure it by feet, not inches.
Yeah. I'm in San Diego. We measure rainfall by centimeters if we're lucky. So. I was wondering, you're a middle school teacher. I was wondering if you had any, we often, a lot of our listeners are elementary school teachers who are not necessarily trained in science. Do you have any tips or anything to engage students? I mean, how do you just feel approaching science, especially at the elementary level, to get them ready for middle school? Do you have anything you could talk about with that?
Well, one of the things I recommend is trying to think about how we can use writing in science. So many people think that science is just working with their hands and building models and so on, but science, there's really a lot of writing, and I know that many teachers in elementary school in the early grades, K through 5, they also have students where they're teaching ELA, they're teaching writing and reading, so there's opportunities there for teachers to bring in other course areas and to show the convergences in science and ELA and even mathematics, and that is really something to think about in terms of the NGSS, those foundation boxes, how they talk about science and also address English language arts and mathematics, other core subject areas. So those are ways that I think would be helpful for teachers to think about, that it's not just science, but we can do a lot of reading, we can do a lot of writing to communicate our ideas to our classmates and to our teachers as well.
Let's talk a little bit about your experience of being an NGSS writer. I mean, that was an amazing milestone in science education. What was your role in that? And let's talk about science standards in general.
Sure. So again, I was honored and humbled, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity work with some wonderful, brilliant people. So a couple things about the NGSS. As NGSS writers, there were 41 of us, and we focused on in-depth meaningful science learning, and the framework for K through 12 science education, which is what the NGSS is based on, identified what students should know and be able to do. And then we as NGSS writers develop performance expectations that really involve integrating the three dimensions, meaning the cross-cutting concepts, the science and engineering practices, and the disciplinary core ideas as defined in the framework. So we didn't prescribe a specific curriculum. We knew that the curriculum would need to be developed to enable students to use all three dimensions to explain phenomena and design solutions as part of their engineering component. So this really opened the door, Tom, for science educators to re-examine, to critique, to generate experiences with their students with the standards as they reflected on their practice. So from my standpoint, spending time reflecting on the NGSS, I personally came to the realization early on when we were writing the NGSS that there were things that I've always taught that weren't in the standards anymore. So for example, having my students memorize the names of cloud types, that's not necessary anymore. Or maybe the way I taught a concept that was focused on a certain practice, like for example, draw a picture of a plant and label its parts. So the NGSS emphasizes 3D learning, but standards alone can't ensure that teachers have the tools to foster this 3D teaching and transform innovations into reality in their science classes. So as teachers, we're called to really try out new things, to think about new instructional approaches, but also a total reorientation and reconceptualization of our teaching.
So one of the great things about education is that it's always evolving. It feels like to me over the years, the things that I learned when I was in school 800 years ago have changed over the times. And right now, you're also involved with a thing through Harvard, the Lab Exchange. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. You're a teacher in residence, the Harvard University Lab Exchange.
Yes.
I mean, that's prestigious just to say, Harvard University Lab Exchange.
Yes.
So what is that all about?
So again, I work with some wonderful people at Harvard University Lab Exchange, but Harvard University Lab Exchange is a free online science education platform from Harvard University. It has over 30,000 digital resources that teachers can use in their classroom. And again, let me say, it's all for free. So this was launched in 2020, and Lab Exchange is really transforming K through 12 science education, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine, what most of us know as STEM education, by making it more open, integrative, and reflective of authentic science inquiry. So we have an interactive platform that bridges learning gaps with interactive content and customizable teaching resources. It gives flexibility to enhance teachers' curricula. And some of the cool things about it, Tom, is it's supported with 30 languages. Also, there has been 57 million users reached. And Lab Exchange creates an equitable, accessible opportunities by providing the best tools and resources to inspire future scientists, problem solvers, and change makers. So teachers, educators can create a free educator account. There are interactive labs and simulations that let students experience science and the scientific process firsthand. Many of the resources are standards aligned, that they can discover interactive resources to integrate into their lessons, so whether it be the NGSS or AP Biology. And something new that we're working on is launching this year is the Career Explorer, which connects education to industry in an interactive career exploration tool for learners.
When I was looking through it, I thought some of the interactive lab stuff looked really interesting. I'm sure it's access to stuff that you wouldn't normally have access to, or see how things work in ways that they would normally not be able to. That's awesome.
Correct, and it's just been a pleasure to work with my colleagues at Harvard Lab Exchange. What I'm so proud of is that how we have teacher ambassadors in different parts of the world, in Kenya, Nigeria, Botswana. So we're working to support teachers in other parts of the world that may not have access to science otherwise because of the environments that they work in. So we're really trying to elevate teachers in different parts of the world as well.
That's great. A recurring theme on the podcast is access for all, making sure that we have that for all students and teachers and, again, around the world. That's fantastic. And we also love free resources. I mean, we talk about NASA and various government resources. There's all sorts of stuff online, which is so this is an amazing thing for teachers to be able to get to. That's fantastic. I wanted to wrap it up with saying, you've been doing this for 33 years and obviously you've had great success at it. If you could go back in time to when you were just starting out, what kind of tips would you give young Kenneth? What would you tell him to expect and the ups and downs? So if a teacher's new to this, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Well, teaching is very demanding. It's also very, very rewarding. One of the things that has been helpful to me is my involvement in professional organizations. So early on in my career, I saw the importance of being involved in one's professional organization, like National Middle Level Science Teachers Association. I'm so grateful for NMLSTA and FOSS for this year's honor. For example, NMLSTA has a proud history of supporting middle-level science teachers for over 30 years. NSTA, same thing, except even longer contributions in helping science teachers. So, excuse me, trying to be involved in one's professional organization, this also provides opportunity for teachers to grow in their skills and leadership. So taking on positions, running for office, mentoring other teachers. So there's a plethora of opportunities that teachers can engage in when they are involved. It may be writing a journal article, it may be presenting at a conference, but these are experiences, Tom, that I've had the pleasure of engaging in and reaping the benefits from. I've met some wonderful people throughout my career. Again, I'm so grateful for the opportunities, and many of those, most of those, have come from being involved in professional organizations and thinking and reflecting with like-minded people that are most interested in what we can do to support our students and help children thrive in science education.
And I would think that today, in the world of the internet, it's so much easier to get involved in those kind of things, so much more support from other teachers, because when you were starting out, it wasn't it was pre-internet, so it was,
yes,
it wasn't as easy. Is that one of the biggest changes you've seen in your time?
Yes, I still remember when I started running Xerox machines. There was no such thing as email. We didn't have smart boards. We didn't have much of the technology that we have now. So that's really been a huge shift in science education. But ultimately, working with young adolescents, they're still children. They still want to learn. They're still excited, and it's up to us as teachers to try and engage students to make science interesting, to make it fun, to make it relevant, and so again, that students can see their identity in science. So it's not just about what happens in the classroom. It's about being able to carry what they've learned in the classroom and carry that out into the world with them. So living near Niagara Falls, most of my students have been to Niagara Falls, so when they go to Niagara Falls and they can see the gorge or they see a rainbow, they can start thinking, well, what causes that? Why is that happening? So thinking of things outside in the real world and questioning and being curious is ultimately what we strive for.
I love it. I always preach that to my own children. Just be curious, go out and figure things out. And over your career, I mean, the countless number of students you must have been inspired at this point to go into science or at least have an understanding of it in their own lives. I think that's wonderful. So I just have to say this has been an amazing conversation. I want to thank you again for being here, and also congratulations on the Teacher of the Year award. And I'm hoping that more of these are in your future. I'm sure they are.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Tom. It's a pleasure. I just want to again thank NMLSTA and FOSS. This award from Dr. Paul deHart Hurd. Just honored and humbled. He had a distinguished career in science education, and his contributions to the field are laudable. Professor Emeritus at Stanford. I'm actually reading his one book right now called Transforming Middle School Science Education, and came out in 2000. So he was a real visionary, where he wrote about needing a science curriculum that meets the needs of early adolescents. This was way before the word phenomena was used. But he was already starting to bridge that gap between what our students need and thinking about things that are relevant to students' lives and their culture and community 25 years ahead. So thank you again for the opportunity to be with you tonight.
That's great. I'm sure that he would be very proud that you got this award.
Thank you so much, Tom.
It's Time for Science is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lippman and Tom Racine, and is sponsored by School Specialty and FOSS, the Full Option Science System, at the Lawrence Hall of Science, UC Berkeley. Be sure to check out FOSS on Facebook and Instagram.